everyone, and welcome to the In-Depth Genealogist Chit Chat Live, where we are talking to Meet the Writers issue of Chit Chat Live. And today we've got one of our newer in-depth genealogist writers for the Going In-Depth Digital Genealogy magazine. That's a mouthful to say really fast. But I'm really excited and anxious to chat with our new writer. And let me know if I'm pronouncing this wrong. It's Ute Brandenburg. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. And you pronounced that very well. Thank you.
Oh, good. I've been practicing. And she hails from Iowa City, Iowa. So this Iowa born and raised gal, and also a University of Iowa Hawkeye fan, has to go and visit her sometime, especially during the football season, so I can go to a game, right?
Yeah, you're not that far from me, really. I actually have come past your hometown quite a bit, so.
Good. Well, next time you got to stop by through, at least to stop by and have a cup of coffee or something.
I'll plan on that.
All right. Well, I want to chat with you today so that people can get to know who you are and how you came to be one of the writers for the Going In-Depth magazine. So my first question to you is, tell me a bit about how you got started doing genealogy and the process you made into becoming a professional genealogist.
Well, it's a long story, but it's an interesting story. So it really starts with my parents. I am the daughter of a Wisconsin-born American. All my father's ancestors are German. And my mother was born in Germany, and she came with her family to Iowa when she was a teenager. So she is a first-generation immigrant. And my parents met in grad school. And I was born in the United States, but when I was 3, they moved to Germany. So I am a person with a home in both countries. I always have had family here and there. I grew up bilingual. I speak English and German at this point, I think, pretty equally well. I got my education and my university degree in Germany, but I've lived in America since 1993, so a very long time. So my father has long retired now, but he was a history teacher. And he, when I was a kid, would take us on trips and take us to museums and show us the Roman walls. And so I grew up with this in Germany, with this constant exposure to the history of the country and this fascination for what came before us. And my father, of course, was always interested in his own ancestors who were German and who had come to Wisconsin. So even before I was born, that was something he always had an interest in. So that was part of my family experience growing up, is just history and family. When I was about 11 years old, I found a box among my mother's belongings with lots of old letters that her father had written during World War II to her mother. My mother was born in 1940 in Germany, and her father served in the war in the German army. And so I found this box with letters, and I thought that was pretty cool until I discovered I could not read them. So they were written in Old German, and I was fascinated by this. And I taught myself just by trial and error to read this Old German when I was that young. And I thought it was a cool secret language to have. So I started, writing in it, and no one could read it even then. The Old German script is something that Germans nowadays actually rarely can read because it has not been taught that way since the 1940s. So fast forward, I have finished my college degree in Germany. I'm actually a trained musician. My husband at the time is interested in violin making, and we decide that we are going to go to America, where there is a violin making school located in Salt Lake City. So unbeknownst to me, we arrive in Salt Lake City. I had no idea this was the Mecca of family history. I had no clue. So I plan on teaching there, finding students. He goes to school. So we're there for 4 years. Within probably a week of us arriving there, we're at a party of new violin making students, and there's someone there who works for a genealogy company. And she finds out that I know German. And she says, well, we're looking for someone who can who can help us with German research. So that's my first job there. Is I worked for Lineages with Johnny Cerny, and I was for just part-time, but that's where I learned about the library there, and I learned to do the research. And over the 4 years there, really got quite into it. I would go on weekends, do my own thing, do my own family research, and I worked for the company there. So then school was done. We moved to Iowa. I pursued my career as a music teacher. I was a full-time director of a music school, actually, for a while. So raised 2 daughters. Life took me to, it's been a pendulum. So life took me between the two. And about 4 years ago, I was moving to Iowa City, and I felt like it was time to maybe back off from the music teaching career a little bit. I was a bit burned out. I still do it, but I had done it so intensely. And all this time I had the occasional, translation job of Old German, because people just discovered that I could do that. And I'd done a lot of research myself. So I was kind of up to date on the developments with the internet now, which of course completely changed the possibilities, and moved to Iowa City and thought, I'm going to do this. So I got the word out, first of all, as a translator. That is really where I have skills that not a lot of people have. I can read old script back to the 17th century. And so I got a website, and things started rolling, and it actually really took off with the translating. And over time, I got more and more into research, and that's actually more fun than translating. So I've been trying to develop that more. And at this point, I'm actually almost full-time researching and translating, and I have 10 violin students just for my getting out of the house. So I do that a little bit on the side, but yeah. So in my life, things have always fallen into place in the right way to make this possible. So that's my long story.
Oh my gosh, what a wonderful story.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, when you said she moved to Salt Lake and didn't know,
I had no idea
what was there. It's like, oh, just wait.
And my dad he's 85. They live in Iowa now. They're long retired. And he has been so thrilled with what I'm doing now. I mean, when I visit my parents, my dad and I will talk for hours about family history. And that's actually, he and I went to Germany, to Bohemia, to his ancestral village about 3 years ago. And I had never been there, his grandmother's village, but he had. But through the work I'd done, I was able to prepare at a whole different level. So we found old houses. And so we've had this bond, my father and I, he's the one, if there's one person to thank for moving me in this direction, he's the one who planted that seed. So yeah, I loved exchanging that with him.
It's in your genes. It's in your DNA. He was a history teacher, and how all that came about, and your schooling, really played like you didn't know at the time, but really had a huge part of, developing that. And so it was, to me, it was your destiny.
Yes,
so to speak.
And what I should also add probably is my mother's family. I grew up her family in Germany is very close. So when we were living there, they live in the northwestern corner of Germany where they speak the Low German dialect. It's Ostfriesland, and it has its very own culture. So, as a teenager, I thought it was kind of boring there. I had no idea until I got into genealogy what a gift I got from knowing this very unique culture and understanding their dialect. So my mother had a part too, you know?
For sure, for
Definitely.
sure. And
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
You mentioned the old German script, which I'm definitely familiar with. Had to start with that right off the bat because my dad was born in Germany. But I know there's a word for that, and I see it on your website, and I've seen it elsewhere. But I don't want to bash the to trash the what it's called. But can you pronounce that German word?
Yeah, the term is Kurrent. Kurrent. You will also often hear people refer to Sütterlin, which is actually just the latest form of Kurrent that was taught in the early 20th century, and it's a slightly different style. So just like language, handwritings and scripts change over time. So really, the overall term for German handwritings is Kurrent from about the 1600s to 1941 when they finally modernized. But both, people will know what you mean when you say Sütterlin as well.
Well, I remember one of the first documents that I received in German. It was the old German script. I was fortunate to find a German professor from Germany who had moved to Colorado and who was doing German old script translations. And in fact, he's told me, he goes, nowadays, or even back then, 25, 28 years ago, no one that was going through school would know how to read that, including his own son. But his son took it upon himself to learn it so that he could teach it. But it's interesting that you mentioned the same thing.
Yeah. And I think interest is actually growing in this in Germany because people are realizing that the last generation who still learned this at school is now disappearing, and there's this wealth of history there that so few can read. So I see that a lot in Facebook groups that I interact with, is that a lot of younger Germans are really fascinated and making an effort to learn it again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's great. What got you started to do the writing and the work entailed to come with the In-Depth Genealogist Going In-Depth magazine?
Well, to be honest, I was invited to join because I know a lot about German. I'm not a trained writer. I am fortunate to have had the privilege of a great education, and that I'm fluent in writing in both languages. But really, it came to me because Jennifer contacted me, and Ursula recommended me, and I took on the challenge. So I do like to write. I've always liked to write letters. But I have no formal education in that way. So for me, I work on the articles I submit a long time because I really want them to be good. But yeah, I don't have any real exciting answer to that. That's kind of what happened.
But that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we reached out and found you, and got the recommendation to have you join, because it is a really important area of research. And to me, I've seen it just explode. It's like the new researchers, or the new I call them newbies, new people coming into genealogy, how it's like all of them have German ancestors. Like, where are you coming from? Or where have you been? So yeah, so that's great. It's very much needed.
Yeah.
What are your, if you were to give 3 tips for someone who's just starting their genealogy research into their German ancestors, what would be the 3 tips that you can give us?
Well, likely if you're starting to do research, you're using Ancestry.com or Family Search. Those are wonderful places to find German records. I often have people come to me and say, I can't find anything about my ancestor born in 1890, about my ancestor born in 1905. There's nothing on Ancestry. So my first tip would be to realize that in Germany, our main record source until about the late 19th century are church records. And these are often on Ancestry and often indexed. But for later years, Germany in 1874 started a civil registration system. So there are civil records for births, marriages, and deaths that were kept by the towns. And not many of these are available online. They've been working on it. So the big cities, like Berlin is on Ancestry. They're working on Magdeburg right now. But if your ancestor came from a smaller town and you know the town, but you can't find them, and they were born after about 1880, chances are that there are records, but that they are still in the town. So you can write and order them. You can write to, it's called a Standesamt, and you can look that up for the town that you need, and you can find their website, and you can send them an email. You can write in English. There's always going to be someone there who knows English. Don't use Google Translate to turn it into German, because it's just going to jumble it up, but they'll just laugh at it. So write in English and tell them what you're looking for. And more likely than not, they're going to be very helpful, and they will be able to either find your record for you or refer you to the place that will have them. So if you know a town, that's really important to know that after 1880s, Standesamt is what you want to contact. So that would be my first tip. Okay. The second would be that one of my favorite record sources, if you don't know the town your ancestor came from, and that's always the big brick wall that you need to break through, their Ancestry now has, or has had for about 2 years, the United States Evangelical Lutheran Church records. If you have a Lutheran ancestor, that is a wonderful source if you can find their town and their church. And especially if you're in the Midwest, a lot of them are available there. These records were kept by pastors with their new growing congregations of Germans, and they were incredibly proud of their German heritage. And in their death records, you will find he came from Bansko and Mecklenburg, and he was born there, and he came to America. You will find these stories. They read like obituaries. And so look for the U.S. Evangelical Lutheran Church records. Check if your town is there. They are indexed, but don't just rely on the index, because there will be sections in the book that will have like membership listings that are not indexed, and that's often where you'll find details. So you actually, it's very time consuming, and it is written in Old German, but usually quite clearly. So if you're looking for a town, that is the #1 resource I would recommend. And third, just the general idea that it's so wonderful what's coming online these days and what's indexed. But don't just rely on the index. You want to see the original record. The index is very helpful, and you can start there. But if you find an index record that you think is your ancestor, look at the original, because it'll tell you so much more. It will tell you if it's a baptism, the sponsors, the father's education. It might tell you that the child died, but the index won't tell you that. So you want to have the courage to look at the original German records. So that's my advice.
Definitely.
Yes.
Because in my case, all of them also included the father's occupation.
Right.
So that's how I knew that, and where the sponsors were from.
And they're often relatives, so you gain so much from, yes. Marriage records will tell you the ages, the parents, whether the parents are still alive, like so much more.
Because you're probably doing a lot of translations and a lot of research, more intermediate to advanced. Let me just add, for like brand new beginner. I remember it as if it was yesterday, but I also got a German word list, which you can get now and download from the FamilySearch.org website.
Right.
And that's very helpful. And another one is using the wiki. I usually refer people to the book "If I Can, You Can" Decipher, which became my best friend very early in my genealogy research. But now you can use the Family Search wiki. And do they have like a comparison of the script and the lettering?
Yes, they're just wonderful. That's the first place to go to, is just go to Family Search Wiki and just type in Old German writing or Old German script and study their advice. I mean, it's a fact that when you do genealogy in a different country with a different language, the records are going to be in that language, and that is the biggest hurdle, obviously, to doing research in Germany. So yes, the Family Search Wiki will recommend resources for you to get started. Have the courage to get. I think everyone can learn to read basic German records with the help of word lists. There can come a point where it becomes too much if you don't know the language, but you can at least get started and learn the words. It's fun.
I'm glad you brought up the biggest hurdle, because that was going to be one of my questions, was what you thought the biggest hurdle was. And I was in the same position, the language, and oh my gosh, it's like so difficult. No, don't let that, or don't allow that to be a hurdle. Just, if I can, you can. That's what I tell everybody, referring to the Decipher book. But, just soak it all in. There's so much there, and we're here to help as well.
Yeah, and just one step at a time. It's one of those hobbies. The more you learn, the more you can discover, and don't get discouraged if you're just at the beginning. Just take one step at a time. You will have to invest time, but it's so fun. It's so fun
you didn't learn. You weren't born learning how to walk.
Right.
So,
I would say, if I may add to the hurdle question, I would also, and again, one step at a time, but I think it's important to realize that Germany at the time of our ancestors was very different than Germany today. So read up on the history of the time, learn a little bit about the geography. Germany was actually many, many little different states until about 1870. So and some of them are no longer Germany today. Some of them are Polish today or Russian today. So it really helps to get an idea about historical and geographical changes over the time.
Right. Well, and you also answered my last question, which was what recommendation when we get started, or when we're looking at different documents and the no information info, where it just has Prussia or Pomeranian. Well, like you said, that's when you have to get into finding the exact origin, and church records are wonderful. I was my mind, when you were saying that, went instantly to the German Lutheran churches around here, in Minnesota and Iowa, and in Chicago. And it was from a German Lutheran church in Chicago that gave my great-grandfather's exact place of origin. They're not going to just put Germany.
Right.
And then here in near where I live now, the pastor was German, and he underlined the surnames and the maiden names. And like you mentioned a little bit ago, how it's like a whole story. Everything is there, and in beautiful handwriting. Even though when I first looked at it, I couldn't read it, but I got so where I could. And with the help of, like you said, the word list, the wiki, your services, the translations, I have a document now of my newly found, my mom was adopted. So about a year ago, I took a DNA test, and it was a couple of months after that, when I got the results, that I also found her biological mom and her mom's parents, and her dad was born. He was one of the ones Germans from Russia, and I have that document that I need you to translate for me.
I would be happy to do that.
I got bits and pieces here and there, but it's, and you need the whole thing. Don't just, rely on just translating just a few of the words. You need all of them.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Especially if you're trying to solve the mystery of where someone was from, or yeah.
And I can recognize the last name of his mom. So that's another generation back. And it falls into place, but it's like, well, what does it say before that? So well, I want to refer people to your website, which is GermanScriptExperts.com. And we'll put the links to what we've referred to at the bottom of these YouTube video. And we'll have that there for everyone to refer back to. Because I know we're rattling off things and so forth. But I want to say that I am so excited to see your articles come out each month. Can you give us a clue of what the next issue has for us?
Well, what I decided to do was, after I gave my first article was just general idea of why people left and what life was like in the 19th century. And then I thought, well, Germany was not one Germany at the time. So let's look at different areas. So the most recent article was about Bavaria. The next one that's going to come out in July, and I mentioned that my mother was from Ostfriesland, which is a northwestern Germany, is going to be about that area. So that one was especially dear to my heart. And it's very different to research there because they have patronymic naming systems. And so I'm giving a little bit of insight in what that's like. So, and where I live in Iowa, there are so many people from Ostfriesland came to this region. So it's a hot spot where I am for immigrants from this area. So yeah, I'm going to write about that. And then I'm going to go to different areas. So if people have areas they'd like me to write about, they should let me know. Some of them as I write, I'm doing some research. So it's also learning for me, some areas more than others. I think the next one after that's probably going to be East Prussia, because I've done some fascinating research projects there, and that area is now Russian. So
thank you.
Yeah. So that's probably the next one I'm going to have on my lineup.
Well, you're more than welcome to use my newly found biological great-grandfather and that next generation back, that document, if you want.
Oh, are they from East Prussia?
Well, I'm not sure. See, I'm still developing that. I'm going to be doing an on-site research trip to South Dakota and then North Dakota, where they were at, and gather more. This is just one document, his christening, baptism / birth record that I have.
So you have some adventures and discoveries awaiting you.
Oh yeah. So, but I may even. I definitely will bring it with me because I'm excited. You and I are going to meet in person at the end of July at the International Germanic Genealogy Conference. That's going to be the 28th through the 30th of July in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So tell us what you're looking for, because people have already heard me say what I'm excited. I'm excited about the whole thing.
Well, I have signed up for, or I indicated on my sign up, some lectures that I was interested in hearing. I think there's some that I will be able to learn a lot from. Someone's going to speak about Bohemia. That's something I would like to learn more about. And I feel like I'm so knowledgeable about German genealogy, and yet there's so much I don't know, and what is it that I don't know? That's what bugs me most. I don't know what I don't know. So I guess that's what I'm thinking is I'll go there and there will be things that I didn't even know I don't know. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And networking, just, seeing my colleagues and drinking beer with them. So yeah, I'm very excited about this conference.
I am too. It's, you mentioned about Bohemia. Well, there's one session on Luxembourg. and my great-grandfather's wife and his brother's wife, whom I suspect are sisters, are from Luxembourg. And I have a town, I have a location. So I need to now concentrate on that line. That is Lucas. So,
and there's some interesting history because there's so much French influence, and they have those French records there, right?
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, that's. Yeah.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, we could take this chat for another hour.
I think so.
But our time is coming to an end. So we'll also put the link for the IGGC, the International Germanic Genealogy Conference, in the comments. I believe they're still taking reservations or to register online. You might be past the early bird, but it's worth every penny to go there. Even if you haven't, and I'm sure you would agree, even if you haven't started doing the German research yet.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure there are going to be lots of people who are just getting into it, and it'll be so motivating for you. I hear that they're also looking for volunteers or having volunteers to help read old records. So there's, Ursula mentioned that to me. So yeah, so if you have questions about your research, bring them. There will be someone there who will be excited to talk to you about genealogy. You know, my family, sometimes their eyes get a little glazed over when I keep talking, but you'll be among your people. So.
Yeah, and Ursula, who we're referring to, is Ursula Krause from Berlin. And I've not met her in person, even though we've had video chats and messaging and so forth. And so I'm looking forward to going to her sessions to hear her give presentations and learn. So even if you can only come up for one day, by all means, it's well worth just dipping your toe in it. Just go for it.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much, Ute, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of the In-Depth Genealogist Chit Chat Live, and I will see you soon. For all of you, please remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors and read the articles in the Going In Depth magazine, and you'll meet some more of our writers coming up soon. With that, I will say farewell and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.